In this age of gender confusion, it's difficult to find advice you can trust to help protect your child from those who would seek to unduly influence them, setting them up to be manipulated and exploited. On Unmasking the Trans Movement, we discuss, educate, and deliver the info parents want and need to help their children, grandchildren, and even themselves.
Welcome to Unmasking the Trans Movement. Now, here's your host, Brad Wylder.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Unmasking the Trans Movement with Jon Uhler. I'm your host, Brad Wylder. Great to be back on this Sunday night live. We've got a great show to get to tonight. We're going to continue on with the 9 red flags. What are the red flags about? Well, we've gone through 7 of them so far. Or 8 of them. No, 9. So 7, and we got 2 to go. That's right. Got to do the math very quickly. We've got a lot to get to tonight. It's been a heck of a ride throughout the past 5 episodes. If you haven't seen those, we recommend you go back and take a look at them as well. But stick around. We're going to join us for part 6. It's all coming up right here on Unmasking the Trans Movement right after this. Citizens and librarians alike have expectations for libraries, and well-run ones can be amazing for everyone. School libraries are often essential to educating children, and as such, special rules apply for the well-being of children in every corner of the world. The World Library Association aims to counter the woke American Library Association's efforts to indoctrinate and sexualize children and hide content from parents and grandparents. The World Library Association provides decades of experience with libraries, and we want to help educate and apply that experience to improve your libraries, whether you're citizens, teachers, librarians, and even trustees. Our common sense model policies comply with community standards, enabling libraries to become truly useful for everyone in the community, and empowering librarians to ensure they work in a safe work environment. The World Library Association. Have questions? We're always open to talk about your libraries, new projects, creative opportunities, and how we can help you. The World Library Association. See us online at worldlibraryassociation.org. Welcome back to Unmasking the Trans Movement on your Sunday night. I was going to say Wednesday. We do so many shows on Wednesdays and Thursdays around here that Sundays are kind of that off day, but this is the day when we really do get a chance to sit down with a lot of parents and grandparents when they're not busy. It's 9 o'clock at night. Hopefully the grandkids and the kids are in bed, and you're able to just join us, sit back, learn a little bit. The school year is about to begin, and that puts a fear into a lot of parents who are sending their kids back to school right now with the way that, school is going, and the education system seems to have taken a hard left, which is, again, generating all kinds of ideologies and transgenderism and, well, we're going to tell you straight out, there is no such thing. We've got the experts. Don't take my word for it. I am not the expert, but Dr. Ann Gillies and Jon Uhler both are. So their trauma expertise with children and adults along the way throughout their time is well established and documented. Jon has done some fantastic work in the U.S. penal system, and I think, just all of that experience leads us to continue to want to protect women and children, the most vulnerable at this point in time. There's been some great things that have happened, Jon and Ann. Great to have you on the program. One of the things was this week, somebody finally made a decision in the United States to say no more boys in women's bathrooms, locker rooms, whatever it might be. A huge win for the U.S., not quite as quick on the uptake here in Canada, but we're working on it. I'm sure we're going to get there with the likes of and the help of Pierre Barnes and a bunch of others that have been a big part of this whole opposition to the trans movement, which, again, is just a bunch of made-up nonsense. These individuals have mental health issues, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, and there's more red flags to come. Jon, what was a big announcement this week?
Well, finally, actually 5 adults on the U.S. Supreme Court voted against this insanity of allowing males into female sports. And we even had Linda Blade, Coach Blade, on the program up in Canada. So we have been trying to do what we can to sound the alarm that really what's going on is this is not about what the media would want us to think about being sensitive to guys that have gender issues. This is about permitting sexually deviant males into the private spaces of women and children. And they've been accessing that. They've been doing that on a number of fronts, but finally somebody said enough, because the men don't care about beating women in sports. How, now they can, in the Olympics, beat the tar out of women.
They have.
Like
they did
that's
it this
a
year,
new
right?
sport.
Yeah.
Okay, but it doesn't happen with drunk guys coming back home from the bar. Now it's happening on the Olympic stage. No, they're interested in denying women. That's just fun for them because they're sadists. Right. Then they get access into the private spaces. So I'm so glad to have Dr. Ann Gillies back here. She's written a number of books that we're going to be referencing. And then as we wrap up this series on the red flags of sexual abuse, what to look for, every mandated reporter should know these automatically. But then we're going to start looking at the red flags of predators. And Ann has written both. So Ann, welcome back. You're a world traveler. It's hard to get you to get on the program, but it's always great to have you back in the saddle, so to speak.
It's always great to be here, John. Thank you. And I'm very sorry my dog decides to start barking.
We're all doing this from our homes. Brad has a complete TV studio in his where he works from. So, and Brad, we're very appreciative. You're a 40-year veteran, and this is a labor of love for all of us. And so, Ann, since you have written a number of books, I'm going to promote them now. Right. We have The Ultimate Deception. The cover is great. The Truth of Gender Affirming Care. We already talked about that, but I want to encourage people to get a copy of this. Very readable, not very long, and purposely so. And you could have written tons and tons. Sometimes trying to write something shorter is even harder, trying to be succinct. And remind people where they can get the different books I'm going to show. Now, you have a website.
I do. That's restoringthemosaic.ca, which is here on the beside my name. But also, you can just order them straight from Amazon. So yes, that book came out just before the final cast review, but the intern review is in there, and so there's like some of the things that they were already saying. So it's definitely a labor of love to kind of get it out there for parents and grandparents, just to get the truth out there any way we can, right, John? And
there you go. Let me remind parents and grandparents and other good people about also and again, shorter book. That's why it's so nice. It's very readable. You can read it almost in one night, to be honest. But Implosion, When the Pendulum Has Swung Too Far, again, they can get that online or on Amazon. Give a brief description, Ann, of Implosion. Then we'll do one more.
That one is very simple. It's a very quick read, like you said, and it really is just about, hey, wake up, folks. This is what's currently happening in our schools, particularly, and just just kind of wake up to what's going on with the hedonism that's being portrayed, but also things like furries and things that people just don't get. So that's a little bit about that book.
There you go. And then beautiful book. This is kind of a coffee table type of book, or really to sit down with a child, a young person, whatever happened to Emily. It's a beautiful book. Every church should have this and make it available to every parent or grandparent. So Ann, give a brief description of this.
Well, it's for parents to sit with their child or an older child to read. But it is the actual truth of what happens to someone who's experienced some adverse effects in early childhood and then gets caught up with the whole transgender ideology in education, and she begins to transition. So, but then how she comes back, and that's based on some true life stories. So, I've had some really good responses from teachers. Getting it into schools is like, no, not going to happen yet, but hopefully hopefully we can get there.
Hopefully
And
we'll-
libraries. It should be in libraries too.
Do you think
Yeah.
there are some
I'm gonna
teachers that
have
are
to go-
starting to
I'm
turn
gonna
themselves
excuse me.
around, Dr. Ann?
I go get rid of this dog for.
There you go. That's fine. And what we'll do, it will transition for the moment just to help, again, re-emphasize to people, you know what, I don't think I want to make sure we have volume here. What we're going to do is, yes, we do have volume. Okay. To help people really understand why we feel compelled to speak out about this issue. This is off of Reddit. I think we looked at before. Actually, we've looked at a couple of these. There's Reddit. Reddit has 54,000 members. These are detransitioners. So if somebody tries to tell you that this is not a significant number, only 1% detransitions, that is a bunch of hogwash. Okay, so this is straight off of the site there on Reddit. And we're going to listen to the pathos behind this young lady as she describes her situation.
I think being repeatedly abused during my youth and developing EUPD caused my issues with my gender, along with severe eating disorders and body dysmorphia. My trans friend says she doesn't believe trauma can force anyone to be trans. And when I explained, I feel like personally it did for me, she says it doesn't work that way. And there's no science proving that trauma has any impact on someone identifying as CIS or trans. I wonder what you all think. I believe I had body dysmorphia that was confused for gender dysphoria. In my teen brain, my head said, I need to be thin and I'll do anything for that. And when I saw skinny men with no chests and anorexic women with basically no boobs, I envied them. And I truly think this changed my brain's thinking into if I was a boy, I'd be thin. It's stupid, I know, but I was 14 thinking this, and somewhere down the line it made sense.
And this was an actual response. And I thought this person did a nice job here. We'll bring up the response. Unless I have to read it. So my poor computer is sort of, there we go.
There absolutely is scientific studies that prove that an unfortunately large portion of trans people have trauma and or mental health issues that led them to identifying as transgender. The majority of the trans people with trauma responses, in many studies, were females who were sexually assaulted by a man and afterwards tried to escape their femininity, and women's vastly higher risk of being SAD by identifying as a man. Even those who didn't realize their trans identity was a trauma response said. So many obvious things that pointed to their transness being a defensive maneuver. And with the mental illness part, it was frequently noted in different studies that bipolar disorder, multiple personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder were present among trans patients. And of course, autism is very common in the trans community. It's well known that a large portion of autistic people have trouble understanding basic concepts, like, for example, gender, and how there's only two genders, female and male. History of SA, mental illness issues, and neurodivergence is all very common in that community. But I'm absolutely not surprised that your trans friend denied your valid points and tried to say there's absolutely no proof, when there very much is. These are the same type of people who eagerly spread medical misinformation, encourage medical malpractice and child endangerment, lie and say that puberty blockers have absolutely zero negative effects on the child's health, TAR, growth plus mental development, lie by claiming women can impregnate men and that men can get pregnant and give birth, that trans women can menstruate, despite being male and having absolutely zero of the female reproductive organs and female hormones chromosomes required to ovulate. That lesbians, homosexual females, have penises or are attracted to penis biological males. That gay men, homosexual males, are attracted to biological females, vagina, etc. The T community is full of rampant liars, misogynists, and homophobes, despite their claims of love and inclusivity for all. So, yeah, you're absolutely correct and your friend is in the wrong, but I'm sure they're secretly aware of that, deep down. Please don't let them gaslight you into thinking you're crazy about noticing obvious patterns in certain groups of people. And I did not mean to type that much. I'm so sorry for the accidental essay.
I thought that was a good essay.
Excellent, excellent.
And any thoughts about that? That was a very good response.
Yeah, I thought it was an excellent response, and everything she's saying, that the majority, have trauma responses, and so what's going on, and the fact that now studies are showing that almost the majority of these children are on the autism spectrum. That's huge. So yeah, I like it. This is my caveat. When I see there's only two genders, I want to say, no, don't cave to the language. There's only two sexes.
That's right. And we'll recapture that little by little.
Yeah, but it's a great response. Absolutely.
And let's listen to another one, because this is exactly why the three of us are trying to help parents and grandparents and other good people. This is right from Reddit as well.
I just need to vent because I'm at probably my lowest point, maybe ever, and I don't have a therapist. Or anyone, really. I just want to die. I had a mastectomy at 16, and it was the worst thing I've ever done. I hate myself and everyone involved so fucking much it hurts. My scars hurt frequently. It was done improperly, so skin folds over itself, and even after revision, it's still incredibly uneven. I feel like I could handle it slightly better if my chest looked like typical FTM top surgery. I feel so hideous. I feel intensely betrayed by everyone and myself. I can't trust my own perceptions of almost anything anymore. I am terrified of men, and I always have been, which definitely influenced my transition. I feel hideous and sickly, and I wish I was dead. I have woken up recently, and the first thing in my head is the notion that it was all a nightmare somehow, and that I still have breasts. It's like my brain blocks it out, because it's so traumatizing, and then I have to realize it all over again. My life is totally empty, and has been for a long, long time despite my efforts to get a job, etc. I overeat and get stoned routinely to cope. Nothing lasts. I feel cursed. I wish I was dead. People tell me once I get reconstruction, I'll feel better. But I've heard promises like that before. I don't want another fucking surgery. I want to be whole.
I was tempted to kind of block the language out, but I thought, you know what, this, out of honor, for this person, I figure we might as well, use her own words. And what goes through your mind as you listen to them?
Well, I just feel so incredibly sad and very concerned for this young woman, because obviously she's crying for help. And I'm concerned about her, suicidal ideation, how, she's not saying she's going to commit suicide, but several times she wishes she was dead. And, this is the whole issue. It brings up a whole subject on trans suicide.
That's right.
And the reality is that these individuals are more likely to be suicidal after transitioning. And it's a real concern, really very concerning. And who told her? She didn't have anybody to tell her the truth.
That's why it's not suicide. That's why it's murder, because there's groomers involved. There's coercion, extortion, intimidation. There's all these factors that are all criminal. And that alone means that it's no longer suicide that's taking the lives of these children. It's actually murderous.
It's heinous. And Brad, before we continue, are there any comments? I keep trying to look to my right and to kind of keep up with them, but if we can say hi to some folks, and then we'll get
say hi to Mr. Alex is out there. Liverbird is out there all the way from Liverpool, England. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We always love our cross the pond pals. Want to say Mr. Alex is here as well. Mr. Alex says he wants you both, Jon and Ann, to know that the change to autism criteria in the DSM-5, Stephen Knapp, an autism researcher, admitted a son, ASAN, played a pivotal role in enabling self-diagnosis as well. And he says, just passing the link on to you guys, and if you can download the PDF, it's mentioned in chapter number 13, he says. ASAN is also involved with the trans movement too. I also noticed that Fox News put out a story just earlier this evening, or about 10 hours ago, that they too were looking at Planned Parenthood, who are getting set to hit the DNC next week in Chicago and start to take care of abortions as well as vasectomies while at the DNC, and creating enough ruckus, obviously, with Antifa and George Soros's crew of bad people.
Yeah, right. There are multiple fronts. This thing is coming, and they have the kids in the crosshairs. So that's what's so.
Well, they keep threatening that they're coming for our children. We've heard that chant in the streets in Canada before. Right. And they all, then, on camera, they'll, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. But even during Pride, they're marching down the street chanting that stuff. So, look, they are coming for our children, and people viewing and people that are going to watch later on our episodes, you need to know that they are coming for our children, you guys.
That's right.
Well, it's a very strategized plan for years, right, Brad? So this is not something new. I just want to thank Alex for his comments, and I'm looking forward to that DSM information, because those are
it'd be good to have that link up there. Well, let's pick up where we left off, because I've added, it may not surprise you all, but I've added a little bit more to the disruptive impulse control defiant, that's oppositional defiant conduct disorder. Again, we're now looking at what every clinician or mental health professional, also doctors, anybody that's a mandated reporter, they are required, at least here in the States, twice a year to go through the training. So these are the indicators, and with each additional indicator, or what's called comorbidity, as far as an actual diagnosis, self-injury would fall under the rubric of other diagnoses, but with every additional diagnosis, it raises the likelihood that there is sexual perpetration going on. That's why we're showing this, or we're spending our time. So what we covered thus far, self-injurious behaviors, that's a huge red flag. That's in the high 90s, I would almost say 95%. And what is you're a complex trauma therapist. What would you say if you see some serious self-injury?
Serious self-injury definitely is always, in my experience, has always been one of the red flags of trauma. So even if it isn't sexual trauma, so it's 100% as far as I'm concerned. But the sexual trauma, I would say 95% that you've got some really good.
There you go. So that we're talking serious cutting or burning when it comes to serious self-injury. We looked at eating disorders, and how many of these kids have multiple diagnoses, or by the time they see a gender therapist and whisked off to or given a referral to a gender clinic, they've already shown evidence of self-injurious behavior, eating disorders, depression, or what's called mood disorders. That can be both the ups and the downs. Anxiety. So again, if a child is perped on, you're going to see these things. So we saw anxiety disorder. We looked at the difference between adjustment disorder versus a full-blown anxiety disorder. The 6-month mark is key if a kid is not getting over it, quote unquote, or adjusting. That's true for adults as well. Panic attacks, bipolar. If these are different diagnoses. Oftentimes there's a misdiagnosis, but you see kids in a psych hospital, you're going to see multiple of these diagnoses, almost without exception. You're going to see these. So with each additional one, it should raise somebody's red flag, so to speak, about child abuse. So we're going to stick with disruptive impulse control, defiant conduct disorder, because I added a few more. I want people to get a sense of, again, what are all the contributing factors? Because if a child is being perped on, you're going to start to see their behavior change. It can be from passive. Now, the gal on the bottom left, she might just be with a bunch of friends. They're becoming oppositional. Does that in and of itself, or do any of these, again, in isolation? Not necessarily, but if we're seeing these layering of diagnosis. And we're going to go into a series next on the red flags of predators. And so I want to encourage people to get a hold of your book, Damaged by the Predators Among Us. And again, they can go on to Amazon or on to your website. But that'll be a primer for what we're going to look at next as far as the series. Okay, again, if here's some reasons why we need to be concerned about the high likelihood of kids being perped on by predators. Here was a famous guy that ran his mouth, so to speak, in a lot of different ways, especially on social media. His name was Stephen Ireland, and lo and behold, what did they find? He was involved in LGBTQ. Whenever you see the TQ, equate that with minor attracted persons, which is a reframing of pedophilia. It ultimately comes down to they want access to the kids, and they want to lower. They know they can't do a frontal assault on lowering age of consent, so they're going to backdoor it, and that's why they're using the idea of bodily autonomy, mature minors. But you're always going to see these men involved in quote unquote education. And over in England, of course, they referred to that group called mermaids. So it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. And look at the charges. By the way, he and another guy, David Sutton, over on the left there, was also arrested. The charges include conspiracy to sexually assault and kidnap a child, voyeurism. See, all they had to do was avoid voyeurism. They just should have joined a female sports team, and then they would be able to walk right into the locker room and shower room. And the commission of a sex offense. And then Ireland faces an additional 22 charges, including rape of a child under the age of 13. So these are the kind of people. He ran this. So that's why we need to be concerned, because predators are going to be lurking wherever kids are. And if you have your gender confused kid involved in these things, you are almost assured that they're going to run across people that have no problem crossing sexual boundaries. These kind of people also get into positions of power. That was over in England right now. There's a big push. There's another person, Stephen Ireland, who was involved in very much these education arm or wings of these organizations. So a patron of Educate and Celebrate. What did they find? Child abuse material. This is a predator's dream come true. This means there are adults who have no clue. And that is a pool of kids that are ripe for the picking. So we need, these kids did not grab that flag on their own. We then looked at what are some of the things that are allowing access and sexualizing kids and priming the pump and tilling the ground, so to speak. We're going to have a lot of anthropomorphic stuff. We looked at that. That'll introduce highly sexualized material to kids. We then have OnlyFans and other websites like that are going to suck kids into that. And then look at what Disney is doing. Of course they are. They're going to sexualize the characters. The idea of BDSM and kink is being pushed on kids in schools. And then people, adults, parents, grandparents need to know that the internet, again, is rife with highly sexualized material, which is perfect grooming material. We then looked at what are the signs of online addiction. Here we have video games. We looked at a video of video addiction, but the question is, if your child is spending long periods of time online, what do you think they're encountering? It's only a matter of time. This is where we left off. This could be video games, but predators now, especially with live interactive games, they are waiting in the wings for these kids. The amount of, this is over in Scotland, 700% increase since 2014. And that was over just a couple of year period of time. So obviously about 10 years ago now, but to show the astronomical increase. And this is the material. We've had Pierre Barnes on this. This is the kind of book. Now, if these were actual photographs, the people that put these books together would be arrested. But because they're in drawing form, they're going to get these by school sanctioned into, right now, Canadian middle school and high school. So you cannot tell me that this is not grooming of kids. Okay.
Well, and John, I mean, it's hard for people to look at these photographs. I mean, just think, even 10 years ago would have been absolutely abhorrent, and it still is. But these are the books.
Our kids are seeing this.
To
if it offends us, right? We have to get involved. This is what these perps are trying to get into the hands of kids.
Yep.
Okay, and so it comes in a bunch of different styles and colors, so to speak. They're being taught this, okay? And here's a screening tool you can use online, especially on social media. Simply ask somebody that's going to poo-poo this and call this art, simply ask them this. Do you think these two men over on the right and over on the left got drag queens? Ask them, do you believe these men have been accessing porn? If so, for how many years? The perp apologists will always deny it. So are these porn-fueled men, and are they accessing these kids? Should they be, who are accessing kids, should they be criminally charged with this? And a predator or predator apologist will always, at that point, start to back off and tell you you're a transphobe or you don't understand artistic expression and all that. So that can be used. That's a very simple screening tool. Take that to a school board and ask the school board members, the men on the right, should they be criminally charged?
And take it to parents. We have to start calling parents to accountability for their
There we go.
I mean, this wouldn't be happening if young parents were not caving, and more than caving, absolutely embracing the indoctrination, taking their kids to drag shows. Hideous. It's absolutely so wrong to expose children to this. So, I mean, there needs to be a warning, and parents need to be warned, because at some point this is going to come back on you. And it may be when your child is older and says, why did you ever do that to me? Because you can't unsee what you've seen, and a child is so impressionable.
That's right. And what do you think these men are going to do with the kids? And if they do something with the kids, what are you going to see? You're going to see behavioral changes. And the question is this: what do you see with these two pictures? I ask people this. Look at the look on the guy over on the left. Is that a normal look? Okay. And over on the left, do you see the child's facial expression?
Yes. Yeah.
Or did we somehow miss that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So those three adults are loving life. The eyes don't lie with that child. What could we expect to see with that child? You're going to see behavioral issues. Okay. And you've written about, I've referenced the issue of furries. I am now convinced more and more that this is, I already knew it, but with the amount of pushback and slime campaign that I've been on the receiving end of, this is one of the most carefully kept dirty little secrets. Let me ask you this. Do you know the sex or gender of the adults around that child, and how many sex offenders are under those costumes? You know nothing about those adults, do you? There would never be anything called sex offenders among furries, would there? And this is their own material. Because perpetrators would never use things like this to gain access to kids, would they? So bottom left story, drag queen story, are once charged with sexual assault. Separate story now, top, middle. And that guy is over on the right. And as we're going to look at the red flags of predators, one of the things we'll see is symbolism. Do you see what those four men are holding? We've got a SpongeBob thing and a chicken. People will learn what some of those symbols are. Okay, so these are each different stories. And then we have, quote unquote, pup play. Parents, if you don't understand what you're looking at, those predators like you. You are their best friend, quite frankly. Okay, how about pup play? How about wearing diapers? You think it's just kink. You think it's fetishes. That's what they want you to think. And what are they going to do? Yep. Oh, there's a convergence of the adult baby diaper lover and furries. And these people actually, this site actually got banned off of Patreon because Patreon knows. So perpetrators are becoming more brazen. All they need are useful idiot adults that can't figure this out, that have had their intuition dumbed down.
Like teachers, school board officials.
Thank you. Exactly. Now, again, Ann, you and I will go into this more. We're just getting a little, I hate to use the term teaser. I don't even like that in conjunction with this. But anyways, a preview of things to come. People will poo-poo the issue of furries, but there's furry art. We're going to be looking at anime. This is how kids are able to be groomed by adults. And I want you to see, we're going to go back just for a second, and then we're going to keep going on the red flags. I want you to see the age and look at the eyes of what happens as these men will start to introduce kids to this. That's the anthropomorphic stuff. Do you notice the ages? We're starting to do what? We're starting to look younger, aren't we?
Yep.
We're starting to look younger.
Yep.
And eventually, lolicon. If you've ever seen this used to be all over Twitter. Okay. Where precious moments kind of things. Okay. And what does that lead to? That's right. You'll start to see these overlapping kind of drawings. Could it be what it looks like? This is how they combined the child exploitation. And if you don't know what those pictures are of, that's exactly what the predators are counting on. It is what it looks like. So whenever you have a man that is into furries, by their own stats, which obviously are going to downplay things, if you have somebody that talks about bestiality, which they're now reframing as zoophilia, there is a correlation. And over on the left, that's Sierra Weir and Phil Illey. They're connected with GenSpect, who now tailors to gender-confused kids. They're all against the sterilizing the medicalization of kids, because my premise is that the more deviant somebody becomes, they don't want the bodies of the young people they are going after. They don't want them scarred. Bestiality furry, yep. He had what? He was busted with bestiality porn. That should not come as a shock. Oh, and we have this guy who's into a diaper fetish, but he was found with what? Correct. That should not surprise anybody. And there's a little story, but we won't keep going on. So they themselves drew this, somebody in the furry community. So all furry porn is inherently zoophilic. They have rebranded bestiality as zoophilia. Look at the followers of that one site. That's a symbol, by the way, of those that are into bestiality. They will always take the language and they will rebrand it. Here's a furry. Okay, pornography under the age of 13. He had 22 counts and sexual abuse of animals. By the way, guys will get into bestiality before perping on kids.
That's
okay.
Right.
That was disturbing. Anything you want to share, Brad or Ann, about that? Or we can talk to the audience. Brad, that was very disturbing. But again, if a kid's allowed to get into the trans movement, get sucked in, he's going to be preyed upon.
Look, it starts at school. These teachers are saying it's okay. These principals, these vice principals, the teachers, the guidance counselors, the school board. I mean, it starts at home in your own neighborhood, folks. And you know what? It's got to end in your own neighborhood. You have to go out and do your due diligence to get involved. You need to stay involved. You need to know what these teachers are teaching for curriculums. You need to ask more questions like a good journalist would do. You need to take initiative. And now's the time, not later. This school year is about to start again. They have another whole 12 months or 10 months to get into your kid's head. And they've got more time to do it than you do as a parent. So I tell you what, at the end of the day, what they're taking away is not the stuff that they should be taking away. A lot of people are getting out of going to school, public school, private school, and they're going to home education. Why? Well, because it's actually got the right morals, the right ethics. Parents are teaching their kids the right way. Not saying every parent has an opportunity to do that, but something needs to change. It starts at the school level. It starts at home. It starts within your neighborhoods. It starts with your neighbors. I see kids in our neighborhood that I live in that have been sucked into this. Mostly it's girls.
Yeah.
Becoming lesbians or deciding if they're bisexual. Lots of confusion. 14, 13, 15, 16. And the school isn't helping. So right. I really hope that at some point, you all want to go after the big dog, but the big dog isn't necessarily the most deviant that's there. I mean, as Jon shows you with the 9 red flags, I think you're climbing your way into deviance and you're getting deeper and deeper and deeper as you go. Well, you don't have to necessarily go after the perp or the deviant person because they haven't touched your kid or harmed your kid yet. What's happening is the person that you left your kid with all day and trust, they're the ones who are saying it's okay to do this. And then the kid gets out on the weekend. You're not around as a parent. You have to continue to work 3 jobs because of our wonderful economy that Justin Trudeau or Joe Biden has put us in. Not to mention every other country in the world that's suffering. And they're, we're not spending enough time with our kids. You need to somehow make sure that you're managing not only your own world, but your kids' world. You need to get involved in your local community. You need to get involved in your local schools. And you need to try to get these individuals to stop this momentum. This momentum dies right within your own backyard. It doesn't have to go to the big deviant guy who's a pedophile or the perp. These people who are grooming our kids and saying it's okay, they're the deviant ones. They're the perpetrators. They're the ones saying it's okay, and they need to be held accountable more so than
open up dialogue, because little by little, your kids are being sexualized. And the perps of the adults are drawing this stuff.
Oh, yeah. And John, the thing with all of these is we have to remember that so much of the furry, the bestiality, those kind of things are very interwoven within the LGBTQ community. They'll deny it, but I certainly, with my
reality.
Former husband, he was into all of that. Well, not furries. There wasn't a thing there way back then, but I find out all these things, and bestiality, and of course, then child abuse, right? So we have to understand that there's a big connection here between homosexuality and some of these behaviors, because there's so much porn integrated into all of that, into the, and I'll call it lifestyle. People don't like to hear that, and of course that will get us in trouble, but we have to face reality and call things as they are. So those conduct disorders and all of those, traditionally, that was young men, boys that started to exhibit those behaviors. But I think in the last few years, girls as well have really become more oppositionally defiant. I don't know if you've seen that, John, but what was traditionally more a male way to deal with trauma, acting out, and girls internalized, that there's kind of some overlap now with girls.
And I really want parents to see that the first thing you're probably going to see is number 7. Right? You take a child who now is changing behaviorally, and you're going to then see some of these other indicators. And now we'll look at number 8, substance use disorder. Okay, you're probably not going to have a kid that ain't going to get into drugs and alcohol, especially depending upon the peer group, if he or she is not, unless stuff's going on the inside. They all go together, all of these things, they tend to. So if your child is into drugs and alcohol, you probably have some of these other diagnoses. Going back to the picture, what do drugs and alcohol do? They certainly mood alter. They are altering the mood because the child is not feeling good within themselves. So they're looking to either get high, meaning they want to get up, so to speak, or they want to numb out. Okay? So that's John, number 8. And sorry,
when you say that, we're not just talking about, experimentation here. Like there's a difference between children just kind of, I want to smoke a joint to be cool, or get drunk to be cool. And there's a difference between that and this impulse, because it goes with the impulse control, right? Substance use disorder, substance abuse, because it leads right into that very quickly because of the numbing and because of, wanting to either elevate their mood or numb down, because they've got to deal somehow with the trauma that they're experiencing, and they don't know how to do it, right? So that's a way to kind of keep themselves somewhat, I would say, from feeling the reality of the pain.
That's right. And if a kid gets into substance use, there's inevitably going to be people that are more than happy to, within their peer group or older, that are more than happy to engage those younger vulnerable kids as well.
Aiding and abetting, right? Aiding and abetting.
Aiding and abetting, right? Somebody's got to be supplying those kids with drugs. It could be a peer, but where's he getting them? There's going to be an adult somewhere down the line getting these kids.
That's right.
Drugs. Okay, we've made it to number 9, but don't worry, we have a total of 16 we're going to look at real fast, and it's not a bait and switch, so here are the big 9. So we finally made it. Okay, OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder. I want everybody to see this list. The more of these you have, you can almost be guaranteed that your child has been sexually abused. But with the trans pushers, what are they going to do? They're going to reframe these as gender-related issues, because all a child has to say is, I don't want to be a girl, I wish I was a boy. And she's got all this. And
then she gets no treatment.
No treatment.
No therapy. Exactly.
The OCD, here's, again, obsessive compulsive disorder. We'll go through this real fast. See, they're uncomfortable unless they're the center of attention. That sometimes is true, doesn't always have to be the case. Act seductively or dress provocatively. And I'll just read through the list and then I'm going to have you comment. Shifts emotions rapidly, act very dramatically as though performing before an audience with exaggerated emotions and expressions, yet appear to lack sincerity. Be overly concerned with physical appearance, constantly seeks reassurance or approval, is gullible and easily influenced by others, excessively sensitive to criticism or disapproval, have a low tolerance for frustration and be easily bored by routine, often beginning projects without finishing them or skipping from one to another, not thinking before acting, making rash decisions, being self-centered and rarely showing concern for others. They have a hard time maintaining relationships, often seeming fake or shallow in dealing with others, and threaten or attempt suicide to get attention.
Yeah. These are really good, John, to point these out. So many, it come back to, they need to feed that wounded part, that hole in their heart, and somehow to bring attention to themselves. Now, there's two ways people can go, though. One is by kind of hiding themselves and trying to kind of be invisible. And the other one is trying to be the center of attention. And you've got several things here that are talking about that. You know, their need for approval, their need to be able to be seen in a really positive light, all of those kind of things. And it's excessive. So when people read these, go, well, gosh, like I look at that and I think, well, I like to dress nicely, you know.
That's right. There's a little balance here.
But you know, is it to gain approval? Well, at one time, actually, it did make me feel better about myself, right? It still makes me feel better. Although when you see me in barn clothes, you might just wonder about that. But so we want to be careful that people don't go, you know, running helter-skelter with this. But it is, again, a compilation of these elements. So these are very good.
And oftentimes OCD is going to include, well, the obsessions and the compulsions. So that can be a classic thing. I didn't list it here. Oftentimes you're not going to see kids do this, but the hand washing. So you're going to see a checking of adults, right? You'll see them checking doorknobs or locks, or making double checking, triple checking. Do they lock the doors, car doors? So they'll have a very hard time getting out of the house. So it'll manifest itself differently with adults than it will with teens oftentimes, but they become fixated. So somebody who is obsessed with something, they're just thinking about it, ruminating all the time, and therefore you're going to see certain kind of behaviors that are just as intense. So it's going to be very disruptive. With kids, it'll tend to manifest itself a little differently. So those are the 9 indicators. I threw in 2 more, because I want to make sure people get their money's worth in, and this will be very important. This is actually, the next one is the one that we won't hear very much about. What did I add? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. We've got a few more. Body dysmorphic-like disorders. Okay, that's actually in some of the diagnostic indicators. So here's another thing you're going to see with teens. So they have a fixation on bodily flaws. And then this last one was important. Repetitive behaviors like nail biting, lip biting, cheek chewing, skin picking, hair pulling. It's called trichotillomania, and non-suicidal injury, just scratching. there's a balance in here, but if you see a child that is constantly doing this, it's an indicator of inner tension.
Well, when I see a young girl, usually it's girls, but not always, that have their nails bitten right to the quick, the first thing I think of is, okay, what's happened to you? What's happened? What's going on? But yeah, you've nailed it. There's a lot of different kind of behaviors like that, repetitive behaviors that children
do. So you can see how I'm sorry, Ann?
Yep. Bedwetting too. Did we talk about that earlier?
We have not, but bedwetting, enuresis, and soiling oneself, that can be a very significant.
And that's not under an OCD, but that's a behavioral thing that happens just as a response to fear. So yeah, It's very common with sexual trauma.
Okay, and you can see how then a lot of these would fit in or be covered up by the quote unquote trans umbrella. Okay, so here are two additional ones. These are very important. These really lie at the heart of it. Dissociative disorders. Okay, most clinicians, mental health professionals, are not up to speed on, or they don't even really believe in them, or that they're very prevalent. But a dissociative disorder really underlies so much of this, because when somebody's harming themselves and they're dissociated, the kind of harm that we were talking about, the serious kind of stuff, they actually won't feel it. They're in an altered state, as it were. So here's a couple of, we'll just go through it real fast, because then I want to introduce some of the other ones. Ann?
Can I just say something before you go through this? Think pup play, because one of the things with pup play, and so we touched on that, is that they alter their mental state in order to endure what is happening to them, because it is so painful. And some of the things that are same with BDSM, right? There's an altered state, and I look at that and think that is nothing less than dissociation. You know, they have learned. And often some of these, like we're talking about, these young men, young adults, some of them young teens, have already experienced sexual trauma. So it's much easier to dissociate once it becomes a way of being, a way of doing, a way of being able to live without actually, I would say, separating yourself, your emotion from the pain of your body, and that is practiced in pup play. It is practiced, because
and that'll be for the submissive, the one that's on quote unquote the receiving end of that.
Yes.
A lot of, and people can look these up. This one actually came from the Victoria government out in Australia, I believe. But you can go online, look up the indicators of sexual trauma and also dissociation. I highlighted the ones in given borderline personality disorder diagnosis, sudden and unexpected shifts in mood. There's probably the same thing, borderline, depression or anxiety. So we could then have 3 or 4 diagnoses that really are better explained and better treated as dissociation. Go down to the fourth yellow highlighted, other cognitive thought-related problems such as concentration problems. So we could that could be labeled as ADHD. So then this kid could be given another diagnosis. Significant memory lapse, such as forgetting important personal data, personal information. I'm sure we could start to have like a delusional disorder, something else going on, anything but a dissociative disorder. When a simple diagnosis, I'm not saying there's anything simple about it, but one diagnosis is going to explain the vast majority of these. Feeling compelled to behave in a certain way, well, that's OCD. And how about identity confusion? That's exactly what the trans perps go after. For example, behaving in a way that a person would normally find offensive or abhorrent. They allow themselves, how about everything from getting body parts chopped off to allowing yourself to be in character role play that's very humiliating and bondage stuff. So,
John, I have something here too that I've always felt right from the beginning of my practice is that
As a matter of fact, I'll get out of this and we'll go back in. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I quickly began to understand is that it really, everything, all the labels, all of the DSM disorders really come back to, and I would say most of them, I shouldn't say all, but come back to if you treat the trauma. If you just treat the trauma, forget the labels, we're going through all this, but in treating the trauma, and that's what happens when you start treating the trauma, the dissociative identity stuff starts coming up very quickly, right? And so understanding that piece with chronically abused children particularly, and that is so important. So you've got those things. So, if we would learn to focus on treating the trauma of that child, I think we would have so much better success.
There we go. Just in the interest of time, and at some point in time, maybe we'll come back to these additional red flag indicators. I'm going to go all the way down to a comprehensive list. How's that?
Yes.
Okay. So where we left off, we were just talking about number 10, actually. Okay, so this is, somebody can take a screenshot of this if they want. So here would be all the different diagnoses that somebody could be given, usually multiple of these diagnoses, that really could find its origin in sexual trauma, and just like you said. So if you treat the trauma, a lot of these things are going to go away. Number 11 would be personality disorders. There are 3 primary personality disorders that a sexual abuse trauma survivor will manifest. We got borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and avoidant personality disorder. Anything about that one, Ann? And then I'll finish the little list.
Well, just when you're talking about borderline, that's probably the most difficult to treat. But every single borderline identified person, so someone's been diagnosed with borderline, 100% have severe sexual trauma, chronic sexual trauma.
And Frank Anderson of IFS says that as well. Here we'll see some other diagnoses. Delusional disorder. Okay, and there's 4 kind of subcategories. Persecutorial delusions. They feel like people are out to get them. And think about if a child was threatened, they will feel like people are out to get them. Things about what they call delusions of reference. So people are giving hints, or they're seeing symbolism. They see something like a dead snake in front of their doorstep, and they may think that somebody placed it there. You know what? They may not be too far afield. Nihilistic, that means a sense of death, that their life is not going to last very long. And somatic, if anybody's ever seen body memories, right? Very real things. So that would be all under delusional disorders. So it's easy to think a trauma survivor is crazy, and maybe they're not. Psychotic disorders, somebody who dissociates will actually hear internalized voices. There's about 5 reasons for voices. Only one of those is crazy. The other is demonic possession. But the vast majority, and I would say almost every time, those are the parts to them that will persecute them, and that is not demonic, by the way. Sleep-wake disorders, how about nightmares? Somatic symptoms, they feel aches because the body keeps the score. And then sexual disorder, especially for adults and in marriage, that tends to be where it will come out. Obsessive compulsive or avoidance. Okay, well, there's the comprehensive list. I'll get back out of this, and then Ann, any thoughts? And then we'll go to the audience. Brad, if there's anybody that has any comments. I've dumped a truckload. We have. Right?
I was just thinking that's a bit overwhelming. You've had several weeks to go through this, but it's still overwhelming for people. But I think that last, putting it all together, is really important. And then people can go back and say, okay, what am I seeing in my child? Are any of these things that Jon's just itemized, any of these behaviors? And then are there more than 3 of these behaviors? Whoa, you better start really looking very seriously. And thank you, Jon. I think it's been really helpful.
Brad, do we have any questions or comments from the audience?
I want to take the time to thank Tim and Miranda for being here tonight. They've been active in the chat room. Lots to say there, Dr. Ann. I don't know if you can see the chat room this evening, but after the show is over, maybe you go back to YouTube. There's some great stuff that Tim and Miranda are asking of you so that you can maybe take a quick look and maybe reply back to them.
Okay.
Some of the questions may need a little more time and effort into our short episode's not going to cover it all. Tim and Miranda, last thing they said was anyone that acts crazy was driven there by someone or something, typically, right? So that can happen.
Way to put it.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't be sorry, Tim or Miranda. That was great. No, we're happy to have you asking all these questions. Dr. Ann will make sure she gives you a better answer, probably on an email or a quick reply back to a comment that you've made, and I'm sure you're going to get the answer that you're hoping to find. So
I hope they do.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I just said I hope they get the answer they're hoping to find.
Exactly.
We'll go back and we'll provide some additional comments.
Yeah, John can help with that as well. We've had a few technical difficulties tonight. I think when I was ranting, I think we dropped audio once there. We dropped audio another minute or so ago. Things happen sometimes when we're doing this crazy stuff. Seems to be an omen we have, isn't it, John?
Telling you, that's right.
So there we go. That's kind of where we're at. What are your last words, John or Dr. Ann? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Ann?
Well, I think it's been a great show. I think it's been very helpful. I know that some parents and some people would be disturbed by some of the images, but remember, these are the very images that are being shown to your children and grandchildren in our public schools at a very young age. And remember, online awareness, you need to be alert to what your children are looking at, and that's really hard. So this is calling for a bit of hypervigilance on the, on part of the parents, and some more than just monitoring. The cell phone stuff, we talked about that before. I think parents are beginning to say, okay, well, this is real. How do we stop this? And so remember, your children have become addicted to their cell phones. That's another whole other series we need to talk about. So taking a cell phone away from a child is probably going to erupt into a major battle, but maybe one step at a time, and taking ownership and keeping those children as safe as you possibly can.
Right. And that's a perfect reminder that we're going to start a series now on looking at the red flags of sexual predators and how do they gain access to our kids, and what should you be mindful of as far as somebody that's seeking access to your child. So we will be starting that series on the next edition of our live stream.
Thank you both for being here tonight. Thank you to all of our guests online and our viewers. We can't do it without you. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe, follow us, share it out there. Make sure that you're helping your neighbors and your family and your friends understand that this ideology, this real troublesome issue needs to get dealt with, and we're all going to do this together. It's not our kids' fight, it's our fight, as I like to say. So please step up, and now is the time. Till next week, take care of each other and yourself. We'll see you soon.